come over here and just munch on my microphone.
Talk, 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 talk.
All right, you ready?
I am ready.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Team Morale Podcast, where we do our three favorite things: talk a little bit of booze, a little bit of beer, and a whole lot of basketball. E and the tall guy coming back with you in Fort Worth, and we're just happy to be back doing another podcast.
Oh, always happy to do another podcast.
And this is a rankings podcast. We're going to be periodically talking through some of the rankings in the NBA. The NBA is a compare league. You compare players, you compare teams. Everyone's being compared to somebody else.
Yes, they are. But we are going to do the ultimate comparisons.
Yep. And it's going to be a series, not necessarily a series, but we're going to be like doing this every once in a while, just talking. And we're doing the top 5 players at each position. And this time it's point guards.
Ah, the point gods.
Yep. And these guys will be point gods for sure. Each of us have a list of our top 5 players that ever played the point guard position in the history of the NBA.
Yeah, we'll have a couple honorable mentions. We'll toss some of the other names out there, but this is the cream of the crop.
Yep. So each of us has our top 5 and then probably 2 or 3 guys that we think are worth mentioning to be in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to go through this, but before we do, I think that we should talk about our drink of the day.
Yes, what are we drinking today?
We are drinking a Martin House Special, which, for those of you who don't know, that is a brewery that is located right here in our backyard, Fort Worth.
Walking distance from my apartment.
Walking distance from Ethan's apartment. So as soon as when the world is open, we are going to be going to Martin House a whole lot. Anyways, here we have Texas Trash, a beer which is a stout lager, and on the outside of it, like on the cover, is pretty much just like your bar snacks, like Chex Mix kind of style.
So yeah, in all honesty, I wouldn't pick these up from Martin House. I walked down there the other day and was like, "Hey, like, what do you guys got? Anything cool?" And they threw this one at me, and it's a Chex Mix beer. And so literally what they do is they ground up Chex Mix, make it into a powder, and mix it into the beer, which is super interesting. Martin House is very boundary pushing in their beers. They have a bunch of wild flavors. They kind of have a cult following where I don't know if I would consider myself part of it. I like going there, but like they have people that like line up and wait for hours to try their new beer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're very seasonal. They love to come out with tons of new different flavors. So I think for me, it's about time to crack it open.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, love that sound.
But yeah, so they have, this one, which is basically Chex Mix infused. They have like a pickle beer. They have a bunch of just wild flavors.
I'll be honest, I wasn't sure what I was walking into. It's weird to say, but you'll really get the Chex Mix flavor.
It's got Chex Mix powder in it, and yes, you do taste it.
You know what? This beer would pair perfectly with another beer.
Do you need something to wash it down? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying, like, this is a beer that would work well with another beer. And okay, so a little background on Martin House. So there was a trio of buddies who were were buddies, and they just got out of college, and they're like, "What do we want to do?" They decided, "Hey, we all have this passion for the brewery business. Let's try to start a new one." The official owner is Cody Martin, who currently is in his like mid-30s. And
how nice would it be to be in your mid-30s and own a successful brewery?
How cool would that be, right?
We're doing it wrong, my man.
I know we're doing it wrong. Don't worry, we're gonna be super popular podcasters by the time we're in our mid-30s. So Cody Martin originally created this brewery in 2011 is when they got started, and they sold their very first beer in 2013, and now they're really just kind of like a staple of the Fort Worth microbrew community.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to live in Fort Worth, and I would even expand to maybe DFW and not know what Martin House is. Mm-hmm. Just because you're going to run into someone who just loves it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's a polarizing brewery. People either love it or hate it.
They go pretty wild with the different flavors that they got. I remember they had one that was like a mango habanero. It's just like they're all over the place. They're like you said, they're always pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, they throw some wild ones out there. They have, like I said, a pickle one that's been pretty popular as of late. My girlfriend loves that one. Shout out, Mac. You made the podcast and we're talking about your pickle beer. But yes, there's a ton of very, very wild and fun brews that are coming out of this brewery.
Yeah, so they're always coming out with fun stuff. This particular one is called Texas Trash. You can see it as the one with it's going to be the beer with all the Chex Mix all over it is kind of its thing. But yeah, we're going to taste it and we'll tell you how great it is.
Yeah, and one more thing about the brewery. They have a really cool location. It's right on the river, a lot of open space, a lot of really cool views of downtown. It's a beautiful place. So if you're ever in Fort Worth and the world opens up, come check us out. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Well, let's get into the top five. Let's get into the nitty gritty. Do you want to start at 5 or at 1?
That's a good question. I'm willing to bet that we probably have similar ones.
I would probably guess. So Mitch and I haven't seen each other's lists. Let's start there. We haven't seen each other's lists, and we don't know like who our honorable mention. We haven't exchanged lists at all, so none of us know anything. But
Producer Jay knows what we have.
Producer Jay did go through both of our lists to make sure neither of us are being crazy.
All right,
or forgetting anyone ridiculous. And I don't know like how you want to go about it, but I think 1 is probably a safe place to start because we probably both have the same number.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun to go down the other way because I think we'll vary more as we go down the list.
Okay, so do you want to say both our ones at the same time? How do you want to do this?
I did Magic Johnson.
I also did
Magic Johnson. I beat you to it.
I picked Magic Johnson for my number 1 point guard before Mitch did. I want everyone to know.
Yeah, but I said it first, so that's all that matters. Okay, so a couple stats for Magic Johnson. He's a 3-time MVP in the 86-87, 88-89, and the 89-90 season. 3-time Finals MVP, 12-time NBA All-Star, 10-time All-NBA selection, and currently a member of the Hall of Fame to boot with his 5 championships.
Yeah, I mean, he's a clear-cut number 1.
He is. He is.
It's not even close. I mean, his career stats are ridiculous. He averaged 19.5 points per game. Oh, and this is also, like, if you look at his stats, so, like, he came back in 95, 96 after, the whole HIV thing and played, like, half a year, and those tanked his career stats.
Oh, really?
So these are, like, these should be higher.
Okay.
But 19.5 points per game, 11.2 rebounds or assists per game, and 7.2 rebounds per game, and 2 steals a game.
On 52% from the field.
Yes.
So
that is... And again, all should be higher because he has a year that tanked him.
Yeah. So let's sit and talk about Magic Johnson for a little bit. So he is the clear-cut number 1 best point guard to ever live. And a big part of that is, he's 6'8". It's hard to guard a 6'8" guy who plays point guard.
He was the point forward before there were point forwards.
Yeah.
He was ridiculous. And also, I can't get through Magic Johnson without shouting out my mom, who's the biggest Magic Johnson fan of all time. Mom, Jennifer Crocker, if you're listening to this, we are talking Magic Johnson, and I am thinking of you. Go Magic.
Shout out Mrs. Crocker.
Yes. But yes, he is the greatest point guard to ever live. I mean, the Showtime Lakers ran through him. They were super fun to watch, and he was as flashy as he gets in the flashiest city.
Yeah, they were one of the original run and gun teams with the Showtime Lakers. One of the things that is going to go down in history for one of the most remarkable things is when he was a rookie, he started at center because Kareem Abdul-Jabbar went out for one of their finals games, and Magic Johnson closed out the finals series in his rookie year playing center after being a point guard his entire the entire first season, and for the rest of his career as a point guard. And it just goes to show that Magic was so versatile. He's kind of like LeBron before LeBron.
Yeah, and it's not like today's NBA where you can just throw anyone at center and they just play center. Back in those days, like, center was a totally different position than point guard. Like, that feat of playing center back in the day like that meant so much more than, like, the random, like, Rockets Rocco playing center today. Like, Magic playing center back then meant he was banging in the paint the whole game as a rookie in the finals in a game in which they won.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's absolutely crazy. On top of the whole Magic Johnson, Larry Bird back and forth and the epic rivalry that those two had, he clearly is the number one point guard of all time. I don't think that there's another point guard that you could put on him that's ever existed that could actually go against him. The only guys that could go against him would be your very versatile small forwards, your Larry Bird, your LeBron James, your Kevin Durant. Like, those are the only guys that could actually match up against Magic, and that's what made him so amazing, was that he really was like a true to the definition point guard.
Yeah, the offense ran through 11.2 assists a game for his career.
Yeah, that's not easy to do.
Ridiculous. That is ridiculous. He had years where he averaged 13.1 assists a game. He had multiple years where he averaged over 10. There was only 3 years of his, or well, I guess again with that 1 year, 4 years of his career where he averaged below 10 assists a game.
Oh.
And 1 year we averaged 9.5.
Oh wow. Oh man, I really wish that I was old enough to have watched Magic, because his later years was when I was like just born, I think, at the time that he had just retired, sort of thing. And I really wish I got to watch Magic, because I think that the Showtime Lakers, I can't imagine there's a more fun team in the history of basketball to watch. They were so good, so dynamic, and everything ran through the flashiness and like energy of Magic Johnson.
Yeah, he embodied LA so well.
Mm-hmm.
He was LA. He was, the glitz, the glamour, the flashy passes, the unnecessary, but it was cool anyways type of thing that was the Showtime Lakers. Just so fun to watch.
Yeah, he was kind of like, he's like one of the OG showboaters of like basketball playing. Like no one was like doing these like crazy behind the back passes and stuff that he was at that time.
And it was like captivating. I mean, again, I wasn't alive to see it either, but I've, growing up in LA, like people to this day just are like, you bring up Magic Johnson and everyone's like, oh my gosh, like, do you remember? And I was like, no. I wasn't alive. And they're like, well, you should have been.
Yeah, and I like to think of myself as a bit of a basketball historian. I love going back and reading and watching stuff about the old NBA and all the old stories and how the NBA became to be the NBA. And 100%, the NBA is not what it is today without Magic Johnson and Larry Bird.
No, that battle was awesome.
They created the NBA because they actually they went through this weird period of later 70s, early 80s, and a lot of the players were doing drugs, and a lot of the watching audience kind of was falling away from the NBA. There was no real stars.
It was tape delayed, it wasn't even in prime time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so the majority of the audience was falling away from basketball, going more towards football and everything. But when Magic Johnson and Larry Bird both came out, they played each other in the national championship with Indiana State and Michigan State. Then they come out, they're the number 1 and 2 picks. They go to the Celtics and they go to the Lakers, which is already a primed rivalry before that, going all the way back to the Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Bill Russell days. And now you have this perfect storm of two polar opposite guys in the perfect situations, and they pretty much rebuild and rebrand the entire NBA.
Absolutely. And it's, again, super fun to watch. We could talk about Magic all day.
Yes.
One quick thing about his stats. He led the league in steals twice. Once averaging 3.5 steals a game, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, he also was a lockdown defender. Yeah. No one talks about that.
Crazy good. Led the league in steals twice, the league in assists 4 times, and led the league at free throw percentage at 91% 1 year.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
I did not know that.
We can't talk about him all day. We have a lot to get to. We've got 4 other picks plus honorable mentions. So I'm going to say who I have at 2.
Okay. You say who you have at 2, and then I guess I'll just rebut whatever you're going to do.
I have Steph Curry coming in at number 2 on the point guard list.
Okay. All right. I'll throw it out there. I have him at 3.
Okay.
I have Steph Curry at 3. I do think that I have someone above him, but go ahead and give me the case. Why is Steph Curry the number 2 point guard of all time?
Steph Curry is the greatest shooter to ever touch basketball.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He is one of the few players in the history of the NBA that you can put on par with other greats that have changed the game completely. People would not be shooting the crazy shots. The NBA would not have spread out and have this pace and space like they would if Steph Curry didn't start just chucking it from half court and making them at a clip that you're like, oh, okay, that's not a bad shot.
Yeah.
There's not a shot on the court where I'm not a Warriors fan by any stretch of the imagination. There's not a shot on the court where he pulls up, I'm like, ah, crap. That's going in.
Do you have any of his stats?
I have. I'm like, his career stats are, he averaged, so his 3-point percentage average is 43.
From three?
From three.
Oh, wow.
On,
that's really high for people who don't know. Roughly.
By the way, on 9 attempts a game or 8.5 attempts a game.
So if you shoot, let's say you shoot 35% from three, like for a season, that's about league average, and you're considered a good 3-point shooter. If you shoot upper 30%, then you're considered an elite shooter. To be shooting 43% for your career is absolutely absurd.
Yeah. On the volume that he's shooting, 8.5 attempts a game.
He doesn't take easy threes either.
Oh, these are step backs. These are contested. Ridiculous. He is a 3-time NBA champion, a 2-time MVP, including the only unanimous MVP ever. He's a 6-time All-Star, a 6-time All-NBA selection. He was on an All-Rookie first team. He is a 5-time NBA 3-point field goal percentage leader, which is ridiculous given the shots he takes. We were talking about this on another podcast, but we're talking about Trae Young and how he shoots league average with shooting crazy threes. Steph Curry is one of the best shooters in the NBA, in NBA history, and shoots even crazier threes.
Yeah, Steph is wild, and it would be one thing if, let's say he had like a Reggie Miller type career arc where he was always the best player on a team that never really like crossed the threshold of winning a championship. But that's what makes him different, is not only was he a crazy, like he's not a stat patter, but he's got crazy stats, but he actually led a team to a championship on his own as the number one guy. He led a team to a championship, and then as the number one guy led a team to be the greatest record in the history of basketball. And like that is what makes Steph Curry different, is like not only is he like a chucker, but he's a chucker that won a lot.
Oh, a lot. Don't get me wrong. He has broken many hearts over the course of his career.
Blazers fans included. We are well versed in how great Steph Curry is.
There is not a team out there that can be like, well, Steph Curry didn't break my heart in this game at least once.
Yes. Yeah, no, he loves the backbreaker shot. You know what I mean? Where you're getting down to like the end of the game, you got 2 minutes left. Say the Warriors are only up 3 points. You're like, okay, we got a chance here. We're still hanging in there. And then Steph does some wild step back, like, or just like shoot from like half court. Remember that game against the Thunder where he had like 10 seconds to shoot and he just pulls up from like borderline half court? He's wild.
He's the king of the, dude. What are you doing? Oh, yes!
He's crazy, and he's always been crazy. And there's a reason I have him at 3-2, so it's hard for me to argue too much against him. Outside of maybe you could say like, well, a lot of his legacy is going to come down to the fact that he played with Kevin Durant, but he proved that he was good before Kevin Durant.
And you can't fault a guy for another guy joining his team.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, you look at his career stats, 23.6 points per game, 6.5 assists, 4.5 rebounds, and here's the crazy thing that stuck out to me a ton, 1.7 steals a game. The guy played defense.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a guy whose career picked on the defensive end. And it was, it benefited playing next to Klay Thompson. But 1.7 assists can't be ignored. And he led the league in steals one year.
Yeah, one of the things that like Steph Curry really got good at was realizing that the rest of his team was really good at defense, and so he like definitely took a lot more chances at like going to get steals, which is exactly why it led to him leading the league in steals.
Yeah, and they always put him on a guy that was like
the other guy.
You don't need to guard him.
It's the other guy.
You can be opportunistic if you wanted to, and so definitely well deserved. We are taking way too long to talk about these guys. This might be a longer podcast, fam, and so.
All right.
I have Steph at 2.
Okay, so you have Steph at 2. Okay, yes. So my number 2 is who I would consider the definition of what a point guard is, and that's John Stockton.
John Stockton.
I have John Stockton at 2, and
Wow.
I have him at 2. I realize that him and Karl Malone fell short, but I'm not gonna take that away from them too much because when Michael Jordan was in his prime, no one had a turn. Like no one had a turn at a championship. If you put those two in almost any other era, I believe that they win a championship. So here's
I'm not gonna lie to you right now. I thought you were going someone else.
Really?
I was convinced that you were going someone else.
You thought I was gonna go Dame at 2.
No, I am shocked. Okay, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so John Stockton at 2, and for me, he is just like exactly when you're like, I need a point guard. John Stockton is what you get. John Stockton is a 10-time All-Star, 11-time All-NBA selection, 5-time All-Defensive selection, a Hall of Famer that averaged 13.1 points per game, 10.5 assists per game, 2.2 steals per game on 38.4% from 3, before three-point shooting was like a thing.
That's incredible.
Yeah. 2.2 steals a game for his entire career. And like he played for a long time, so it's like when he's like old Stockton too.
I mean, he's played for over a decade.
Yes. Well, he played for a long time. I'll have to look it out, but he played 15 plus years.
That's dear God. I mean, those are some stats. And I mean, I'll be honest. I have him at 4.
Okay.
I have Stockton at 4. So I mean, I didn't leave him off my list, but I mean, he's a stud. What else can he just is a benefit or not a benefactor, just a result of playing against Michael Jordan.
Yeah. He's one of the unfortunate casualties of playing against Jordan, but I have to put him at 2 just because it's one of those things where when you want a point guard, you want a guy that's going to be pass first, but can also create his own shot and can knock down threes timely. You also want a guy that's going to be a lockdown defender against the other team's best point guard. And everything about that is John Stockton. I mean, you don't just average 10.5 assists per game. 13.1 points per game, that's underwhelming, and I get that. But I just I don't know. I love Stockton. I love going back and watching Stockton. The whole him and Malone dynamic is one of the best duos in NBA history. And it mainly runs through his ability to run the pick and roll.
He was one of the first guys that was really proficient in playing the pick and roll. And he was also one of the guys that you look at him and there's players in the NBA like this, but he was the definition of it. He never played too fast.
No.
The game, when he had the ball, it was one of those things where okay, we're good.
Yeah.
He's going to play his pace and he's going to get what he wants. He's not going to rush into a shot. He's not going to make a mistake. He's going to get the ball where he wants to go, where it should go, whether that's him or another player. And he's going to get, it's going to get there when it gets there. And by no means is he going to make a rushed or unnecessary decision.
No, he is going to do exactly what he wants to do when he wants to do it, and he is going to be the one in control. No one else is going to control his game. He is going to absolutely dominate what is happening on his end of the floor. So that's why I have Stockton at 2. I'm glad that you also have him in your top 5.
I have him at 4.
Because I think that's where he should be. So,
well, you go again. Who do you have at 3?
Okay. My number 3... Well, okay, so I actually already said it. My number 3 was Curry.
Okay.
So who's your number 3?
I have Oscar Robertson.
Oscar Robertson.
Yes.
Dude, so I went back and forth. Well, we're going to get to our later guys, but I have him as my number 1 honorable mention.
Really? You left him off?
I love Oscar Robertson.
He was the triple-double machine before Westbrook came along.
So he was the only guy to average a triple-double before Russell Westbrook, and I remember thinking it couldn't have even been 5 to 10 years ago when I was like, nobody will ever average a triple-double again. It seemed so crazy. I remember the closest thing that we had growing up was LeBron. It was will LeBron average a triple-double? And then we entered this era of super, super fast-paced play, and the stats kind of got bloated a little bit, and Russell Westbrook totally took advantage. Russell Westbrook by himself is a great player, but Big O was so good at everything and just was one of the ultimate all-around players that there's ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. He was just unreal. He averaged 25.7 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, and 9.5 assists for his career. They called him the Big O. They called him, and then his other nickname, Mr. Triple Double, which was as fitting as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally fair. He did win one championship in 71, and I believe that was with the help of one Lou Alcindor, who, for those of you who don't know, was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar before he was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah, he just absolute stud. I mean, played for the Bucks, was just, I mean, as good as it gets. Again, they called him the Big O. He had a long career for the Cincinnati Royals before he played for the Bucks. So like some of his NBA stats kind of aren't necessarily the same because the Royals, I don't think, were a part of the NBA. It was kind of like this weird like transition period.
They were a part of the NBA, but they later that team ended up being the Sacramento Kings. Actually, that could be another podcast of how we like talk about like how teams transition. But Cincinnati Royals were an NBA team at one point, but it was a short stint.
Yeah, and so like some of his stats don't necessarily translate the right way, way they think they should. But he won MVP in 1964. He was a 12-time All-Star, a 3-time NBA All-Star Game MVP, which is up there in terms of MVPs.
Wow.
He was a 9-time NBA first team, a 2-time NBA second team. He was the Rookie of the Year. He led the league in assists 6 times. And his number 14 is retired by the Kings, and his number 1 is retired by the Bucks. So it's a very prestigious thing to be your number retired by one team, let alone 2.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show, like, I can't believe I didn't have him in my top 5. I ended up putting some other guys over him. I guess part of it is because I've gotten a little bit less enthused about the triple double thing, but I think that's mainly why I decided to put him in my honorable mention. But overall, Oscar Robertson was just so good, and just like the fact that you can be retired on 2 different teams and be Mr. Triple Double before that was even really a thing is amazing.
And fun fact, he led the NCAA in scoring 3 years. Out of the 4 years there, he led college basketball in scoring for 3 years.
Wow.
The guy was a bucket, but also could pass and rebound.
Yeah, there was. I have read that there was some issues with Mr. Robertson's like attitude, and that he was a bit of like he was definitely an alpha dog and demanded a lot of his teammates, and that could kind of get underneath people's skins. And so like I've heard that he had some attitude issues back in the day, but it's undeniable the talent that he had. He was bigger, faster, stronger than everybody, and played the point guard, and that's what led to him being so good and so like overall all around great.
Oh, he was amazing. Absolutely. Let's take a break here from our list and let's get into this beer real quick.
Oh, right. The old Texas trash. All right. I am enjoying it. It's good beer. Honestly, it's one of those where it's like you just like you drink it while it's a good one. I would say when you're at a pub and you're hanging out. I have mine in the can. You have yours in the glass. It's a little darker than what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's darker, but it doesn't taste darker.
Mm-mm. No, it doesn't. It's easy to put down. It definitely has. I don't know if you know exactly what I'm saying, but it has a bit of a twang to it. Like definitely, like there's like a certain like Texas twang that's like past lager, but not all the way to like a dark red or something like that. It's right there in the middle.
It's like a lager stout. Mm-hmm. It's a stout lager. It's like it's not. It's in between the two.
Yeah, exactly. And it is funny. Like I mentioned this earlier, but like the very first sip I took, I was like, oh my gosh, that's Chex Mix. Like that tastes like they grounded up Chex Mix and put it in there.
I mean, the beer screams Martin House.
Oh, yeah.
Just because, like, and those of you in the DFW area will know, like, you know Martin House when you taste it just because it's just wild flavors. But it's good. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Martin House. I wouldn't say I'm, like, one of their cult followers, but, like, I enjoy myself a Martin House beer from time to time. Mm-hmm. And they miss sometimes. This one wasn't a miss.
No, I don't think that this is a miss. I think that it's there's some that they say, they're like, oh, like the pickle beer or the habanero mango beer, and you drink it and you're like, I don't know. But this is exactly what it says it is. I mean, on the label, it's the snack beer with Chex, Cheerios, pretzel sticks, pecans, salt, and spices. And they're not lying. It's exactly what it is, and that's exactly what it tastes like.
You hit the nail on the head when you said it's a pub beer.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what, again, when the world opens back up, you're at the pub, you're watching some sort of sport game, and you're making friends with some guy you barely know, and you're like, hey, it's the two of us tonight, man.
Hey, you want to have some Texas trash together?
We're going to drink some weird, beer with Cheerios in it, and we're gonna watch this game, and we're gonna root for the same team, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely enjoying it. It was much different than what I thought I was going to be drinking when I first cracked it open, but I'm easing into it and quite like it a bit at this point.
You don't think, like, when they say it's a Chex Mix beer, because again, when I bought it from the guy, he was like, "Oh, this is our Chex Mix beer," that you could get that much Chex Mix from it.
No, I was like, nah, it's gonna be a lager. Took a big old gulp. I was like, oh, there's a lot more going on in there than I anticipated.
There's some taste we had. Martin House definitely adds some taste behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anyways, guys, go and try out Texas Trash. Go try out, honestly, any Martin House beer. Go, explore the vast wilderness that is Martin House and all the crazy, crazy flavors that they have.
And it is awesome. You will find one you like. I guarantee it.
Oh, yeah. You might have to try a couple you don't, but you'll find one you like.
Absolutely. They are definitely not afraid to push the boundaries. But let's get back into our list here. I have said my number 4. My 4 was John Stockton, who you had earlier. Who do you have it for?
Yeah, so we're through your first 4 already.
We have gone through my first 4, which were Magic Johnson, Steph Curry, Oscar Robertson, John Stockton.
Yes. I have a different 4. I have a different number 4 because I had Oscar Robertson as my number 1 honorable mention. My number 4 is another guy who I would describe as your prototypical point guard, Steve Nash.
Ooh, okay. He was my second honorable mention.
Oh, really?
He is, don't get me wrong, former Mav, love myself some Steve Nash. And he's awesome.
Yeah.
That's all I can really say. All these guys, I mean, we're talking about the top, 5 to 7 point guards of all time. Like, none of these guys you're going to have a lot of negatives to say about them.
No, we're in the time of when we're splitting hairs, right? Like, these are all amazing players that are great. I kind of went with, like, the general philosophy of who are my absolute prototypical point guards that, like, if I'm drafting a team, like, what point guards do I want? Like, and that's kind of why I went with Stockton at 2, and that's why I have Nash here at 4. There's not a better person to build an entire team around than a Steve Nash. The guy does everything you could possibly want him to do offensively. His the funny thing is, like, his career stats, like, don't blow you away. 14.3 points per game, 3.0 rebounds, 8.5 assists, and shooting 42.8% from 3, that's really the thing that, like,
42 from 3 is impressive. And they were with the run and gun Suns. They shot the 7-second Suns. They shot the ball like ridiculous. Again, another guy that changed the NBA. The one reason I had him, I have to say, in my honorable mentions as opposed into my top 5 is my top 5 guys all, like, or I guess opposed to John Stockton, all were like championship winners.
Yeah.
And that was what the one knock on Steve Nash is, he was never able to put it together for a year and win a championship.
Yeah, it's totally fair. I thought about the championship thing, but I kind of put it to the side and just went straight with, like, how a guy plays and who he is as a point guard. And that's why I had Stockton so high. And that's why I have Nash so high. But Nash played for 20 years or 19 seasons. He had, like, a short time period when he was one of the most dominant players in the game with the 7-second Suns. And, like, really, like, almost changed the way that, like, you have to guard a pick and roll by him dribbling the ball as crazy around as he does. And, like, there's a lot of point guards that have kind of taken that from him at this point.
There was over dribbling, and then there was what Steve Nash did, but he made it work.
Yeah, his over dribbling turned into, like, I remember him, like, running circles in the paint.
Yeah, and you're just like, and defenders are like, what are you doing?
What's
like,
this teeny little dude doing around me?
Like, stop. And the next thing you know, he'd find a wide open guy for a 3.
Yeah, and so he was one of the guys, like, they built a great team around, like, they built a really solid team of what he needed around him with good shooters around him. Amari Stoudemire as an epic pick and roll partner. I loved watching Steve Nash growing up. He's one of my all-time favorites. He is one of the guys where I don't know, it's hard to describe. He's just, like, he was so good at shooting, he's so good at passing. Offensively, he is exactly what you would want in a point guard.
He was our generation, me and Mitch's generation, which are guys in their mid to early 20s right now. Mm-hmm. He's who we grew up with. And
yes.
He was so fun to watch. No one hated Steve Nash and the Suns.
No, it was hard to.
You look around and you're like, dude, they're just fun.
Yeah.
Like they just do awesome, dope things.
Yeah.
Like,
It felt like they were always overachieving because you never really expected a lot from the Suns, but they kept making it to Western Conference Finals. I believe they made it to 2 different ones. But yeah, he never made it to a finals. He never won a championship. And part of me credits that to not having great teammates.
that and like very similar to when the Stockton Malone ran into Michael Jordan, they ran into the Kobe.
Yeah, the Kobe Shaq.
Yeah. And he, you can't let this go. He won an MVP in an era where Shaq was dominant.
2 MVPs.
Yeah, he won 2 of them.
2 MVPs.
Shaq was
04, 05, and 05, 06. And Shaq averaged like 30 and 15 one of those years too.
And it was just, that's how good he was.
Oh, yeah.
He was dominant.
Yeah, he was on one of those teams where they're a nothing team without him, and with him, they're a Western Conference Finals team. And I think that he propelled that team to greater heights than they ever should have been. Maybe I put him too high because of my personal bias of loving Steve Nash, but I think that he's a top 5 point guard.
I do not fault you with him putting it. You have him at 4, right?
Yes.
I do not fault you for him at 4 by 1 bit. Again, he's my second honorable mention.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily. I have my honorable mentions. I wrote them down in an order by the order they came to my mind. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would put him above the guy I have before him, but he just was like the second guy that came to my mind in terms of guys that I didn't put in my top 5.
Totally fair. Okay, so that being said, who is your number 5?
I have from the Detroit Pistons, Isaiah Thomas.
Me too.
I was about to say, he's
too.
I feel like Isaiah Thomas is a solid number 5.
Oh, yeah. Isaiah, I mean, he honestly goes down as one of the more underrated players in his generation because he was so hated.
That, and he was the one that like challenged and called out Michael Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
Those two did not like each other.
Michael Jordan it's unofficially a unsaid thing that Michael Jordan did not want Isaiah Thomas on the Dream Team when Isaiah Thomas 100% should have been on the Dream Team.
Like deserved it.
He was one of the best players in the NBA, and they just didn't put him on the team because Jordan was like, no, I'm good. I'm not going to play if he plays on my team.
Nah, screw that guy.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me some of his stats.
So Isaiah Thomas, hold on, I had him pulled up. Give me 1 sec. I have to go back on my phone.
No,
all right,
you're
here we
good.
go. I got him. So he averaged 19 points a game, 9.3 assists per game, and 3.6 rebounds a game, with 1.9 steals a game for his career. Again, not crazy stats, but a guy who just did what needed to be done. Mm-hmm. I mean, he never averaged below a steal a game.
Yeah, I think that he's one of those guys that he did have a great career. He was a 12-time All-Star, but he had one of the better primes of anyone in the NBA because he did get to win 2 championships in an era that featured a still very well and able Magic Johnson and a MVP winning and up and coming Michael Jordan, and he led 2 Detroit Pistons teams to championships in that era.
Yeah, I mean it can't go unsaid. There was a year where he averaged 21 points a game, 13.9 assists, so basically 14 dimes a game.
Wow.
Do you understand how hard it is? Like no one in the NBA nowadays average even like the assist leader barely touches 10.
Yeah. If you're thinking about it, your team, like your best shooters average, let's say at the very best, 50% from the field. That means that he is passing it to 28 guys for a jump shot or for a layup or whatever every single game. Everything ran through that guy.
That is crazy. Okay, so assists per game. Like last year, Harden led the league with 11. The year before that, it was LeBron with 10. And then it was 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 11. And then it was 10. So everyone kind of barely touches that 10, 11 range. You know, there's a couple of 9 sprinkled in there. This guy put up 14.
Yeah. Very underrated in that aspect. Also was an absolute fierce competitor. Like he was like, sometimes people kind of sleep on Isaiah Thomas as like just another guy on the Bad Boys. Obviously the best player on the team, but not necessarily the same intensity that Bill Laimbeer or Rick Mahorn brought. But he absolutely was a dude from the Chicago streets that and grew up and was not afraid to fight people. He was throwing punches at people all the time back in the day. Back when it was fun to do that.
He was a dog for sure. That guy had some fight in him for sure. I mean, They didn't call them Bad Boys Pistons for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So Isaiah Thomas, one of the better jump shooters, like early jump shooters and creators that the NBA had. And he was majority of the offense because the Pistons were a very defensive oriented team, and him and Joe Dumars pretty much ran the offense on the entire squad. And the fact that they could go and win a championship built around that shows how good he must have been.
Yeah, he definitely 100% deserves to be in this top 5 and just is a stud.
Yeah, I totally agree. Love me some Isaiah Thomas.
All right, so who are some of your honorable mentions that you left off your list?
Okay.
So I have 3.
I also put 3.
Okay, we can just rattle through this. We don't need to go into huge depth, but...
So I already told you that I had Big O as my...
Okay.
He was a huge stats guy. Love Big O.
And I have Steve Nash on
yes.
mine.
And I
So
think,
we each have 2 more.
honestly, those 2 guys, like, they're very flippable as to what you're looking for.
Let's be honest. All these guys, I would say Magic Johnson's the safe number 1. After that, everyone can kind of be shuffled around a little bit.
Yes, it's a big group. Okay, so as much as I wanted to put Damian Lillard on the honorable mention, I think I gotta wait a couple years for him to win an MVP or a championship first.
I was about to kick your ass.
Okay, but the other 2 guys I have, one is arguably my favorite player to watch growing up, which is Jason Kidd.
I have him as well. He was my number 1 honorable mention.
Okay.
So I had him, and then I put Steve Nash.
I love
Jason Kidd. The guy is, I mean, he won't be remembered as a Maverick, but I love me some
in your
Jason.
heart.
Oh God, 2011 was a great year.
I'm willing to bet that he's going to be remembered as a net.
Yes,
As a net.
He should be remembered as a net.
Some of his best years were actually with the Suns, but
Yes.
he's going to be remembered as a net for the 2 finals that they went to and him kind of being the catalyst of those teams.
Yes.
The other honorable mention that I had was Chris Paul.
He was my other honorable
Was he
mention.
really?
Yes.
Okay.
So my honorable mention were Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, and Chris Paul.
So really, we ended up with the same top 8, which is kind of impressive.
Yes.
I want to throw one random category out there that as I was doing my research, I kind of came up with, and this is what the could have beens. The could have been top 5, and it's 2 players, and it's Penny Hardaway and Derrick Rose.
Derrick Rose, I definitely see. Just because if his knees didn't give out on him, that guy was on pace to do some crazy things.
Youngest MVP of all time. Got it in what I believe was a 3rd season at only 21 years old, which...
Pushed the team to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yes, and very well possibly could have been a championship finals contender if he was able to stay healthy. Derrick Rose was so good. But Penny Hardaway, also to his own credit, at the time that he came into the league, everyone in the league was looking for the next Magic. Who is going to be the next tall, athletic playmaker that could change your franchise? And Penny was that guy. Penny was absolutely that guy before injuries derailed him.
Yeah, and both those guys, super upsetting, super sad. Injuries just, it's part of the game. And Derrick Rose played a very violent form of basketball.
He did.
It's just, his knees gave out on his very violent way he played. He jumped and dunked and just went into the paint with such violence and such explosion that his knees couldn't hold it.
Yeah.
Penny Hardaway, not necessarily the same thing, but kind of the same thing. He just
ended up with knee issues, but it wasn't the same kind of style that D Rose was playing. Still very athletic, but I wanted to toss those guys in there just as like maybe they could have been. And you never know. Maybe someday we're going to be talking about Luka and maybe my boy Dame in this category. You never know. You never know.
Let's take a second here. Mention Chris Paul. We didn't talk about him.
Oh, yeah.
Chris Paul's a stud. Just a bona fide stud.
He's another one of those guys that, like, when I was talking about what you're looking for in a point guard, and he gets other people open. He will always be able to knock down that little elbow jumper that he's been taking for what feels like 30 years at this point.
Reliable 3-point shooter.
And is an amazing defender. Amazing defender.
Size, especially.
For his size, but also, like, just an amazing defender. Like, every point guard I ever saw him go up against, like, had a real hard time against Chris Paul.
He definitely... Every person out in the NBA says, I'm too small to be a good defender. You look at Chris Paul and you're like, never mind.
Yeah. And it takes a certain guy to be as successful as late into your career as he has been. And a big portion of that is because he's just so well-rounded in everything. He doesn't really have any holes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, guys, that is our top 5 point guards in NBA history, plus a couple of honorable mention, plus a couple of what could have been.
Yeah.
And brought to you by Texas Trash Martin House. Hope you guys enjoyed. We're happy to bring these to you. And cheers, man.
Yeah. Cheers.